let's get into Q&A. Now, I got people to fill out some forms. I'm not revealing anyone's names here, but I've got some responses here from people that I would like to address. So somebody said making the switch from day job to full-time development role, borrowing repayment capacity as a property developer instead of employee with a fixed salary. To this person, I would like to suggest, and to anybody, I would like to suggest that if you've got a good high-paying job, it is imperative that you keep that job for at least two developments until you completed two developments, because it becomes easier. Now, on the other side, it's a little bit harder to get loan if you got no job and if you got no equity. In my scenario, I had no job, but I had equity that I could use and multiply and turn over in a project. But if you've got job and no equity, I would say keep your job, complete two developments, because then you've got leverage and you can borrow and you can sail through a lot of stuff. Because I had no job, I had only equity, I had to go to shark lenders. And shark lenders, the interest rate is close to 9.5%, 9.75% in some scenarios. And their setup costs are through the roof. In fact, I finished a development where we built the development in 6 months' time. How's that? Well, it was a 12-month project, but when we got into the project, we paid a deposit and we negotiated a 6-month settlement. In the terms, I negotiated that I should be allowed to sell them off the plan without actually settling on them. Now, there is a way to do it. So the lawyer did all the paperwork and everything so that we could sell them to everybody, to whatever we wanted to sell them. So I needed 3 pre-sales. Well, I needed 3 pre-sales. So we got 2 pre-sales, and then we settled and we started construction. Exact 6 months we finished construction. My cost for the interest for the 6 months of that period for the loan was only $35,000. But my cost for setting up that facility, for the quantity surveyor, for all the admin charges of the lender, all kinds of evaluations that I had to get done before we got the loan, they were close to $40,000. So the interest was actually lower than the actual setup cost. And that's why it's actually very expensive to go to a shark lender. But having said that, you want to do well in this industry, you got to learn how to swim with the sharks. So, and that's what I teach to all my mentoring students, all my people, because on your own, yes, you can push it. And I'm not saying to sell my course or sell myself. I'm telling you, there will be so many different places that you wouldn't know there are so many different blind spots in here. So unless you've got somebody you're talking to every day on a regular basis throughout the development, you wouldn't know what's coming or what's around the corner. Or you invest in a system so you can see the whole thing in one hit and then you move ahead. My lender, the same lender who lent us this shark loan, came to us and we were talking about another project that we want to do. And he was talking about 3 different other developers who are doing multi-apartment projects and they've got no clue what they're doing. They are stuck with the builders that they've got because the builder's taking them for a ride. It's just that those people have deep pockets so they can afford to ride all that. And the reason I follow a system because I only had a limited pool and I wanted to make sure that it has to be right every time, no matter what I'm doing. So that's why. Another biggest roadblock, sometimes it's a little frustrating waiting for people. You just have to get used to this. And next time that happens, don't let it upset you because finance industry, especially, I think this particular individual had to wait for the brokers to come through, and it took them 7 weeks to get it right. Unfortunately, that's what the industry is, and you need a broker, but you need a good broker who knows what they are doing. There are brokers who specialize in just retail finance, where they come in, refinance everything. It's a 9 to 5 job. Okay, I'm buying this property, 80% LVR. Do you have serviceability? Yes, you do. Okay, that's your loan. And there are people, when you're doing this, you need specialized brokers who understand how this is done, who understand how they can leverage off two different assets, who understand what you cannot do, or the project cannot do, and they understand how the feasibility works in the project. Um, Also, at the moment, waiting for surveyor report for a property, which is fine. Don't let it stress you too much. This is just normal. But we have this rule. It's called TNT, which means today, not tomorrow. And otherwise, everything just becomes TNT, which is an explosive, gunpowder, basically. So TNT stands for today, not tomorrow. So if you are going to follow up with somebody, or you ask somebody to do something, make sure you make 5 calls, because nothing's going to happen until you actually make those 5 calls. So you have to be on their back. So don't think that, oh, I've already told him, I'm just waiting for him to get back to me. It won't happen. Won't happen, because you have to be on their tail, because you want to make sure that you optimize your money, you optimize what you borrowed, you minimize your interest, you make sure that you got all your ducks lined up at all times, at all stages. So second, make sure that I have the numbers right. That's no problem. If you were to join the course, there are different kind of feasibility examples there, and there's a different set of webinars that I do for my students, which is a 12 monthly webinars that they can become part of, and I show them all these things, how it's done. If somebody sends me a feasibility, I show them how it's done for their project, but it's done on a monthly basis. If you understand how a feasibility is done, it's very easy to run numbers. I can actually now run numbers in my head. But initially, when I started, I had to write everything down. Then I had to put in Excel and then see exactly what was happening. But now, when I get details, I know exactly where the project is at. But then again, having said that, doesn't mean that I don't do a full-scale financial feasibility. I always do. I have a full-scale financial feasibility application, which is part of the course, where you can run numbers in details, and there's a financing sheet which tells you how finance would work, and then you get a summary sheet that shows you everything, what the project demands and what the project has, and so on. Choosing sites, I find development site costs are very expensive, thus the developer margin is very small. It's because every landowner wants to be a developer without actually taking the risk, so it doesn't matter. But there are always deals out there. In fact, I have somebody who's just found a deal and he wants to join the course so that he can reach to other students, basically to be able to do JV with other students. Capital and knowledge. The biggest roadblock is capital and knowledge. Capital, it depends upon what your situation is. So what I look, I have a different, I have a full methodology of arriving at a suburb and selecting a suburb to say, look, this is where I'm going to develop. And it depends upon a lot of different factors that I use as a combination of to get to that level. But the one other thing is that you've got to figure out the suburb shortlist that you've done. You got to make sure that, can you pick up something in a suburb that fits all those criterias but also fits your budget. And that's how you would choose a suburb to do a project like that. As a thumb rule, none of my developments are outside of 200 meters of activity centers like train stations, schools, shopping centers, or public transport, some sort of. I don't go anywhere outside of that 200 range. I pay a little bit more, but I know that even if the market was to go south or something was to happen, very least I can rent them the next day. So I stick to some principles in that scenario. Creating my property plan, 1 to 5 year, finding deal that will generate. Guys, if you have more questions, just type them in and send them across and I'll address them. Creating my property plan, 1 to 5 year, finding deal that will generate enough equity profit to continue investing. Then again, this question can be easily solved by going through all those criteria that you need in order to, and I'll address some of them shortly, to be able to get that project. And this is more like an individual thing. So this is more like a one-on-one stuff where I look at where you are at, how much equity you've got, how much serviceability have you got, what kind of project is best for you. That's the project you will do. How are you going to do it? Can you do a JV with somebody? Can I match you with somebody in a similar circumstances as you are, or from the same state, from the same city as you are? Also, I don't go to country towns and I don't go to mining towns at all. I stick to metropolitan cities. I've got development in Brisbane, I've got development in Melbourne, and at the moment, I've got a student in Sydney who's doing a development, and I'm helping him out with what he's doing and how he can execute that development. Um, why are you guys doing this? Some of them are saying to learn about property development as full-time job. I would highly recommend that you do the course, and if you are ready to do a development, you should do the mentoring program. If you want to make that switch, you don't have to do it. I've got one student also from Sydney who did the course, and 2 months later he was in a deal, and he's all good. Okay, I've just got a question in the window. Hi Amber, on average, how much is in percentage wise does a DA add to a raw site? Now that's a very tricky question. It's a very tricky question. Um, Give me 10 minutes and I'll cover that when I get to the financial feasibility. I'll show you some numbers how, and when I explain you this, I'll address that question aligned. So give me 10 minutes, I'll get to that because there are some questions that people have sent across through the pre-webinar survey that I want to address first. So trying to find a development site, never want to stop educating myself. There's always much to learn. I am on the same boat. I am always reading, studying. In fact, I just wanted to get into Masters of Property, and I felt that it was a 6-year part-time course from RMIT and Melbourne Uni, and I said, "There's no way I've got 6 years to do that." So I looked at what the curriculum was, and in the curriculum, I looked at the text, the prescribed text, and I found out what those texts were. And I ordered 5 books for myself of 5 different subjects that I wanted to learn more about. And I've got all those books that I'm reading now every day, so that I'm at the top of my game and I'm at the top of what I do, basically. So. What would you like me to cover in the webinar? Woo, so many of them. Now, most of them came from one person, but I'm going to start addressing them from the top. How did I get started, or at which point did you switch to do a full-time job? What top items to look for when assessing development site? What type items to walk away from when doing a development site? Now this is more, I'm trying to rush through all of this so I can give you an overview of the due diligence. Otherwise it gets pushed into the next due diligence webinar, which won't happen for another 6 weeks, because the next one is the property development one. So these two questions I'll answer later. How did I get started? I basically, in 2012, I quit my job and I told my boss, look, I can't do this, because I used to work for 4 hours and spend the next 4 hours researching property and doing what I was doing. And I mean, it's not like I was lacking at work. I just said that my heart's not in it. There's no point in me staying here. So I said, here's my resignation. I'm gonna get into property development, and I did. So that's what happened about 3 years ago. How do you work out what a DA would cost to add to that feasibility study? How do you work out what all of the council costs will be? I'll show you what the council costs are, because somebody else also asked this question. And I will address them again when I get to this, which I will. And I can show them to you how to do the council contributions as well. Once you have an idea of the concept plan, is it best to give the building companies our budget, or just find out what it costs to build two into three bedroom. I would say you never give your budget to the builder ever. You have to keep your cards close to your chest, and you got to. In fact, you can't even get to that level unless you already know what it's going to cost you to build. Because how are you going to get into a project where you haven't done your feasibility, where you don't know what the construction cost is? So you must know what this is. And the way I do that, I will explain you some numbers. You can use those same numbers. In Victoria, what I'm building, it's a turnkey project. It's about $1,600 a square meter, including GST. And that's what I'm building at. I know what I'm building at. Now, there could be some builders who just to get your contract would say, oh, mate, I can build it for you for $1,200 a square meters. Be very, very, very off these builders, because this industry is cutthroat and it's a race to the bottom. And the problem with this is that you actually hit the bottom when you are just going by price. And the only way builders can get your business is if they give you a smaller price. Because first, 9 out of 10 people who got plans and permits in their hand don't know what they mean or what's involved in them. So they are at the mercy of the builder. But they think if I go to four builders, I'll get a better quote from one of them, and that's the guy that I'll go with. It doesn't work like that, because you need to understand what it is, what's involved in that, so that you can make an educated decision, and you know how much you should be paying. And there's a way to get around that, even if you don't know anything and you can't be bothered learning about construction and everything. I'm in that boat because I don't know the nitty gritty of construction, but I know how much everything costs. I can't build a site, but I know how much everything is costing me, because I pay all the bills. The way around it is that you hire a cost consultant of your own. You can go check it out. But you can get an estimator and give them all the plans and everything. It'll cost you about $2,500 for something like a 3 townhouse development or a 4 townhouse development, and you spend that extra money for peace of mind, so that you know that you are not, being shafted basically. So that's the way to do it. Otherwise, you use figures. You call up a few builders. If you're in Brisbane, I would pick up the phone, call a few builders in the area that you live in. You can walk outside of a construction site, and all the details of the builders have to be on the fence that's up. So it has to be on a board. So give him a call and say, look, I saw that you were building that. All I want to know is, I'm planning to do a development, and it is exactly what you are building. And I'd just like to know how much, ballpark figure should I allow for in my feasibility. And he'll give you a number. He'll say, no, you don't have the plans. We can't give you a quote. But stress on the fact that all you want to know is like a ballpark figure. You're not going to hold him for it. Just get that ballpark figure out of him. What to look for in choosing sites, what features to avoid. Again, this is the due diligence questions. I really want to get to it fairly quickly, and I will once we get to this. How much to startup capital would you be required for a relatively small development, 3-unit townhouse? It depends upon how much those units cost. The end value of those units is $1 million. It's going to cost you a lot more to build 3 units. If the end value of those townhouses that you are building is only 500,000, you should be able to do that project with 150,000 in your pocket, or $100,000 in your pocket. You should be able to do that project because you can leverage everything else off. So it depends upon those scenarios, what the end value of those townhouses are going to be. Because if you go to architects in Melbourne, architects are snobs. I've noticed I've come across maybe a couple of architects who are really good and down to earth. I've got one really, really good architect in Brisbane that I work with, and I will always work with that guy because that guy is down to earth. He charges a little bit more, I know he does, but he gives me so much peace of mind. He listens. He gives his feedback. He's fantastic. He's a really good person. But in Melbourne, they don't charge as what it's going to cost them to do the work. They look at the cost of the total construction, and then they'll say, "Oh, it's a $5 million construction, so I've got to charge at least 150,000 here." So that's how they will structure their pricing. What are the key? Okay, the side. Okay, there's a question here. Sorry. What are the key due diligence issues to identify when trying to find a suitable development site? Again, key due diligence is all here. I'm getting to it slowly. The site would have to zone LMR, but there are different categories of LMR sites, LMR2. How do you know which type of LMR category is required for your potential development site? LMR stands for low medium residential area, something like that. This is a Brisbane code, so I'm not very familiar with it. But here's what I would do if I was in Brisbane. Brisbane City has Plan 2014 mapping zoning maps. I would go here. This is what I have done in Victoria. I'm not joking. I have the areas that I develop in. I go to the council websites and I read everything. This is the Victorian side for the same thing. This is the Brisbane side because Brisbane only has one council. In Victoria, I've got to find out what the council is and then go and read everything from the council's website, because every council has their own planning documents on the website. The good thing about Brisbane is that it's just one council, and everything is very straightforward and on the side. So get onto this site, which is basically building planning guidelines. Click on something and it'll show you all kinds of zoning. This is a map that you can download from here. But what I found in Brisbane was they had this interactive mapping, and in interactive mapping you can actually click on a site, right click, click on the site, and it tells you what zoning it has. I'll just refresh this page because it's not responding. So what you basically do is you look at, you can put in your address, find out, make sure that in Brisbane, everything you do, make sure you get the flood-wise property report. You have to get it, because Brisbane doesn't only has the issues with flooding, it also has overland flow. And make sure that you stay away from such sites. So, and in Brisbane, I have seen that there are sites where one site is absolutely fine, everything is great, but the block right next to it has overland flow, and that site has no value. But if you engineer and put a slab on it and build everything on the slab, you can actually make money there too, and reduce your costs and so on. So what I'm saying is, go through this. They've got all these zoning maps, details that you can go through. And what happens is that in Victoria, if you're looking at something in Victoria, I'll just click on it and see what we have. I don't know, somehow I have lost that page and I don't have the time to actually start looking for that page again. But there was a page where the whole map is interactive, and you can actually look at it. City plan interactive mapping, which is this. Just give me 1 second. I just wanted to show you how. See if I can just, okay. Property labels, suburbs. I don't know, zoning map. Zones. Okay, I don't know. Somehow I have lost that page. There it is. It just, so City Plan 2014 maps brisbane.qld.gov city plan. If you click on it and you click on any site, again, it's not showing me. I don't know why, but there was a way. It was every property that I clicked on, it showed me what zoning it had, and whatever I could do, I could just read more about it, about that zoning. In Victoria, we have the similar thing. I'll just show you what what we have in Victoria. Basic report. Okay. Just give me 1 second. I'm so sorry for this. I should have been prepared, but somehow that page just became. So here you've got CR1 element, LMR 1, 2, 3, low medium density residential, 2-story mix, 2 to 3 story mix, up to 3 stories. So that's what these LMR 1, 2, 3 stand for. And there is a full section where you can read about what's possible in each one of them. So before you may, and that's what you get. I mean, you'll get a planning zone which said general residential zone GRZ, and this is schedule 2. So this is in GRZ 1. So if I click on it, it'll open a PDF. This is in Victoria though, and it'll tell me exactly what I can do on that site. So if you want to do something like that in your area, I would suggest that you find out what that zoning is and then read everything and whatever you can about that zone so that you know what it is. Even if you went to your architect, you would already know what is possible on that. And they talk about everything in that. They will talk about the maximum height that you can get to, the density, all those things. The site would have to meet a minimum frontage requirement. Where do I find this information to confirm the frontage requirements? As a thumb rule, I don't look at anything that's got less than 14 meter frontage. And I'll give you an example of that. This is Google Maps. You look at anything, any site which has 2 townhouses or something built on it, something like this. So it's got 1, it's got 2. What it is that there's no thumb rule with whether or not something can be done, because it can be designed to sit in a way that 2 vehicles can go in and out one by one. What they want to see is that the vehicle should actually be able to turn and then come out face first and join the road, or come out face first to the street. That's what they want to find out. But if you even measured some of these blocks, and you looked at, okay, can I put 2 on it? If you just measured, you see it's going to be minimum 14 meters. If I change this base map to another kind of map, let's zoom out a little bit, and let's look at, here's another block which has 2 on them. Now all these blocks have 2 townhouses on them, 1, 2, 1, 2, and they're all subdivided already. So if I was to just measure how big are they, so you just go and say 14, 16 meters. So if I was in your shoes, this is what I would be doing. Whatever site that you're looking at, I would go to Google Maps and look at similar sites in that area close to where that site is, and see what kind of frontages do they have. And then that's how I would be picking up that frontage. There's no hard and fast rule, because I could design these to be slimmer and spread more across if the site's got more depth in it, and still have those people come in, come out. And all you have to do is look at the size of the crossover. If you know what the crossover size, whoops, not this. So if you look at, this is the crossover, and if you look at, it's only 3 meters, and they can still make it work. So the frontage is fine, because again, if you read more details about those LMR 1, 2, and 3, you will find these details specified in there. What would be the GFA requirements? The GFA requirements are very different. It's GFA is gross floor area, for the people who don't know. And the way it works is usually that they will look at a site, let's say it's 1,000 square meters. They will let you develop 60% coverage. So they will let you cover the site 60% of the total area. That's your GFA. That's what you can build on. But then again, if design wise it doesn't work for the cars to come in, turn out, get into the garage, get out of the garage, and come out face first on the street, that GFA would be a lot less. Not only that, I've had councils where the GFA was exact 60%. We designed it to be exact 60%, and they said, no, make them smaller because they're exact 60%. So you don't want to fight with the council. So we redesigned everything so it was 59%, and I went back in and they said yes to it. What size site would be required for a standard 6 townhouse development? As a thumb rule, I allow 200 square meters as a footprint for each townhouse that I'm developing. So for six times 2, 1200 square meters. But you would need permeable area, you would need private open space, you would need access for the cars to come in, come out. And if this is 6 townhouses, is it single bedders or double bedders? It depends upon. Sorry, it's 2 bedders or 3 bedders, because 2 bedders would have requirement of just one car park space, and a 3 bedroom would have requirement for double garage. So it depends upon all those things. How do you determine how many townhouses can be developed on a site, taking into consideration exactly the same thing? On a 1,000 square meter block with 60% GFA, I know that I can put in 3 very easily. I can cover 3. I can design it so only 600 square meters is covered. How do you determine council contributions for the development of the project? Okay, it's different in Victoria, and it's different in and it's very different in Brisbane. I think this individual is from Brisbane, so I'll explain to you how it works in Brisbane. If you're developing anything with 2 bedrooms, it's $20,000 flat. If you're developing anything with 3 bedrooms or greater, it's $28,000 per unit or per townhouse, and so on. However, let's say you've got a block with a house with 3 bedrooms on it already, and you're gonna demolish it and put 3 into 2 bedroom townhouses. So that's 3 times 20,000, so that's 60,000. However, that block already had a 3 bedroom house on it, so you will deduct the 28,000 from it to arrive at your figure. I hope you understand that. In Victoria, it's different. Townhouses, if you're putting townhouses on a block of land, if you're putting 4 townhouses on a block of land, it's 4% of the land value. Who determines that land value? The council does. When you submit your plan of subdivision, council will send their own valuer from their valuation department. They will come back with a figure which is going to be very similar to the figure that you see on your council rates notice. Excuse me. And if you're building apartments, when you submit your building format plan, they will look at the apartments and they'll say, that's our valuation of this block. We're going to charge you 4.5% of it. So that's how it's done in Victoria and Queensland. I've got no idea how this is done in New South Wales, because I've never developed in New South Wales, but the student who is developing there, when he gets to that level, I will find out how that works there. Okay, going back here, how do you determine council contributions? That was the question. How do you determine the DABA cost per townhouse, including all consultant fees? It's all done based on, when I do my 2-second visa, I do it on averages. But when I do my full-scale financial feasibility, I do it based on quotes that I get from all different consultants. So when I do it on averages, I would allow, let's say, for a consultant, 5% of construction value. And I know that this would cover me quite a bit. But it depends. It's different. My allowance is different for townhouses, and my allowance is different for apartments, because I have experience and I have a lot of townhouses that I've already done. I have apartment buildings that I've already completed in Brisbane, or I'm doing in Victoria, and I can pick up numbers and look at my averages and say, this is what I need to allow for. And this is what I teach to my students in my course as well. To complete a medium construction finish, would it be approximately? Yes, look, in Victoria you could build for that. I'm pretty sure if you were in Brisbane, you would definitely build for that. In fact, one of my mentoring student in Brisbane is coming back with $1,300 and $1,400 a square meter as well. But I would do the same exercise: pick up the phone, call a few builders, chat them up, find out what you can get it for. What is the margin scheme? How does it work? This is not a due diligence questions, not a due diligence question. However, margin scheme in a nutshell is that you get charged GST on the value that you add. If you do pick up any of my financial feasibility calculations, if it is under margin scheme, you just put a Y in here, and if I don't, then my GST liability is more. If I put yes, it's not. So I explained that in my course, how it works, but it's not a due diligence question. Um, is it common to negotiate with real estate agents? Yes, of course, you can, but the good ones won't budge, and the bad ones would take any commission. But then the downside is that you don't end up selling, and I don't end up selling faster. I do that. I'll give you an example. I'm paying about 2% plus GST somewhere else where I want to sell them for quick. I mean, those are expensive apartments. I want to move them quickly, but I'm also paying 1% to another commission to another agent. And we know that, sooner or later this will move. I don't have a lot to sell. So it's basically cost benefit analysis. And what would you like me to cover in the webinar? Feasibility examples. One could be something that has potential. I would not discuss this right now, but if you join the feasibility webinar, which is going to be in 4 weeks' time from here, I do exactly that. I discuss feasibilities in it. Would you choose to finance a development if you had the cash for it? Is there more value in financing to have more property? If I had the cash for it, I already do, and I do all of this in the sense where if I can get away without getting the bank involved, I do that because the amount of hassle and the time is wasted having a lender in there with the costs that get inflated. The lender will not give you a dime until they've got a QS report. The QS report costs about $4,500, $5,000. They won't give you anything until they've got a valuation done. The valuation report will cost you another $4,000, especially if it's a commercial valuation with plans and permits and so on. That's 10 grand. And not only that, they will make you jump through so many hoops. They'll make you sign all the paperwork with the solicitor. That's another bill from the solicitor. They basically make your life miserable. It's actually, I can't believe how the system is, because everyone's just out there to get the developer and the builder. It's like, there are too many fingers in the pie before, you can make all of this happen. And as developers, you do actually have to carry all that right till the end, because your payday comes right after everyone's payday has already gone past. You get paid last. But the good part is that you get paid really handsomely. So don't let that bother you too much. What would a complete feasibility study of the development include? As I said, the complete feasibility of the development would have the full input cells, starting from your acquisition cost, the kind of deposits you've made. You've got professional fees, all sorts of professionals. In my feasibility program, I actually leave these consultants in there. And the reason is that when I'm doing my feasibility, I don't miss anything out. So I leave them there. Then there are reports and permits you got to allow for. There are construction costs, there are council contributions, there are other land and other holding costs, there are selling costs, um, all sorts of miscellaneous costs like lawn mowing, accountancy, like a bookkeeper or something, house removal, bank fees, commercial val, all those things. And you also, in a full-scale financial feasibility, you allocate what month do you expect that expense to occur, because then that gets posted into that month in future, so that you can see your cash flow requirements throughout the development. Full-scale financial feasibility would come in with things like sorry, it's too much zoomed in. Are you providing private funding or your funding? How much money you're going to bring in? At construction, what are you going to do? And again, this would calculate everything throughout the course of the development to see what it is. And towards the end, you'll get a summary of all the costs, all the development costs, land acquisition, selling and other costs, finance costs, total development costs, revenue, and your and all sorts of metrics that you need to understand to know where your development is at. So, if I was going to build a high rise, what would my development team consist of? It would consist of a lot of consultants. What happens in townhouse? The difference that I've seen from townhouse to apartments is that apartments is a different kettle of fish. It requires a lot more consultants. From even consultants, I don't even know the name of this consultant. Um, there are consultants who look at your plans and make sure that it's got disability access through the lifts, through the corridor, through the lobby, through everything. So there's fire engineer involved, there's landscape architect, even in buildings there are landscape architects involved. So it's a big team. So if you were to doing something like that, I would expect you to know everything about the development before you actually get into, unless you've got a lot of money and you can ride the wave with it. And a lot of developers do who have a lot of money get into it, just bleeding at every stage, not knowing what's going on. Consider the next couple of years. Where would you choose to build a residential tower? Brisbane, Sydney, or Melbourne? I am from Melbourne, so I would do that in Melbourne because I know Melbourne better than any place else. In fact, I am actually looking at a big development in Melbourne, which has about 55 apartments or something. Now we are thinking of going towards aged care. We're talking to the government department for that. So it just depends how it goes. It's a big project. I don't even know if it will die or if it will stay alive or how far I can push it. But at the moment, it's not costing me anything to keep that project brewing in the side because we are in talks with the government department. So I have kept it alive. Is high end a good thing to consider now, owner occupier market? Yes, I am doing high end at the moment. The apartment building that I'm doing, each apartment is about 769,000 to 886,000. The townhouses that I'm doing, I've just sold one for 940,000, and the one in the front is about 1.1. All the other ones are 975. So I am in that market at this stage. Um, if you are doing investor stock, if you are building something which is targeted more towards investors, you can do that, but you got to be careful with your location. You got to look at the council development pipeline, see how much other competition you're going to have in that area, because when you've got too much competition in that area, it's going to be difficult to be able to sell them. What are some accounting issues to watch out for? Again, it's not a due diligence issue, so I will leave that. What do you look? Again, it's not a due diligence issue. When pitching a concept like residential property, what would be a focus point? I would start from demand and supply and then build my case around it. Because just because you can develop doesn't mean that you should develop, because everything depends upon demand and supply. No matter how good your profit shows, if it towards the end of the deal you're not selling them fast enough, you'll be bleeding money towards the end. So, but then again, don't let this thing scare you. If you know exactly what you're doing, you prepare for it. And towards the end, like my development that I've done in Brisbane, we developed 9 of them. We sold 3 of them off the plan. 2 of them, hopefully, fingers crossed, will get sold in the next couple of weeks because I've got clients that talking to the agent. We've already finalized the price. One of them is an overseas client and so on. So I'm not worried about it. What I'm saying is that my fallback position in that scenario was if I didn't sell any more and I had 6 left, I knew that me and my partner who's in that project with me are going to keep 3 each. And what we did was we looked at what the rental in that area was, and The rental came in, we got rental appraisal done, and we got them in at 460, 470 a week, and so on. I did my calculations of $400 a week, and I knew that I was going to be $30,000 positive on my three, and he would be $30,000 positive on his three, even if we had to keep him. So you do all these things beforehand, and you've got all these things in your hand when you get into it. Site selection, what would you look out for? Hidden problems. Again, this is a due diligence question which we haven't got time for today.